They laughed at her. They mocked her looks. They whispered behind her back, pointing, giggling, and calling her names she pretended not to hear. To the townspeople, she was nothing but the ugly girl, someone to ridicule, someone unworthy of respect, someone better left forgotten. Everywhere she went, the stares followed. At the market, vendors ignored her. At gatherings, people moved aside as though her presence itself was an inconvenience. No one cared to know her heart, her dreams, or even her struggles. To them, her worth began and ended with how she looked, and in their shallow eyes she was worth nothing at all. But here is where the story takes a turn. Because behind that face they mocked, behind the quiet girl who endured cruelty in silence, lived a truth none of them ever imagined. A truth that, when revealed, would make every insult, every smirk, every careless word come back to haunt the very people who spoke them. They thought they knew her. They thought her appearance defined her. But the day her true identity came to light, not a single voice dared to laugh again. The same town that mocked her now stood frozen in silence. This introduction sets the stage for a tale of hidden strength and shocking revelation, a reminder of how easily people judge what they see, and how deeply wrong they can be. Because beauty fades, appearances deceive, and first impressions lie. What lasts, and what truly defines a person, is far beyond what the eye can see. And in this story, the girl they rejected was not who they believed her to be. The town didn't know that behind her quiet steps was a secret so powerful it would turn their jeers into shame. They didn't know that the ugly girl carried a destiny greater than all of them combined. And soon, the entire town would learn the truth the hard way. Her name was whispered more often as an insult than as a person. She wore plain clothes, hand-me-down dresses faded from years of use, shoes with worn-out soles, and a scarf that was patched in more than one place. Her hair was never styled like the other girls, and she carried herself quietly, as if hoping to go unseen. But in a town where gossip was louder than truth, she was never invisible. Children at school found reasons to mock her. Look at her clothes, they would laugh. She looks like she came out of the dust. Some went further, pointing at her face and comparing her harshly to others. The cruel words stung, but she never cried in front of them. She learned quickly that tears only gave bullies more power. At home, things were no better. Neighbors treated her with the same disdain. When she passed by, women whispered behind their shawls. Men scoffed under their breath, and even elders shook their heads as if she were a disappointment to the entire community. Festivals and celebrations that should have been joyful instead became reminders of her exclusion. No invitations, no warm welcomes, only sidelong glances and harsh murmurs. The rejection was not only from children or peers, it came from adults too. The market vendors often ignored her when she tried to buy something. Teachers overlooked her even when she raised her hand. If she fell, very few reached out to help. The town had already decided who she was, and to them she was nobody. But what they never knew was the quiet storm she carried inside. While the world saw only her plain clothes and unremarkable face, her mind was sharper than most, her heart stronger, and her spirit far more resilient than anyone guessed. She walked with silence, but her silence was not weakness. It was the patience of someone who knew she had nothing to prove to those who mocked her. Every night, she lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering why she had been given this life. But she also whispered to herself, "One day they'll see who I really am. One day they'll regret every laugh, every insult, every rejection." And deep within her was a truth so powerful that it could shatter the town's shallow judgments. She carried a secret about who she truly was, one that, if revealed, would have changed how every single person treated her. But she kept it hidden. For now it was her shield. For now it was the fire that fueled her through each day of humiliation. If only they knew the truth, they would have bowed their heads in shame. If only they knew who she really was, not one of them would have dared to mock her. What the town didn't realize was that their cruelty was writing the very story that would one day expose them. Their laughter would turn into silence, and their whispers into regret. For the girl they called ugly was not who she seemed, and very soon, the truth would change everything. Life for her was not just lonely, it was a battlefield. Each day brought with it a new reminder that she was unwanted, mocked and ridiculed by the very people who should have been her community. At school, the humiliation was loud and merciless. Children found joy in her pain. When she entered the classroom, whispers followed. Some laughed at her patched clothes, Others exaggerated their disgust as if simply sitting near her would contaminate them. Once, during a group activity, every hand eagerly joined except hers. The teacher called for partners and no one chose her. She stood frozen, clutching her notebook while the room filled with giggles. That moment, small to others, carved itself deeply into her memory. The cruelty did not end in the classroom. On the playground, children teased her openly. They mimicked the way she walked, mocked the roughness of her hands, and sometimes even threw pebbles to provoke her. Their laughter echoed like knives. She wanted to scream, to fight back, but instead she endured. Her silence, mistaken for weakness, became their excuse to continue. Outside of school, rejection waited for her at every corner. Festivals in the village, where families came together in bright clothes and cheerful dances, were moments of isolation for her. She stood at the edge of the crowd, watching lanterns glow and music fill the air, only to be shooed away by the elders. "This place is not for you," one woman said sharply, waving her off as if she were a stray animal. The sting of those words burned deeper than the laughter of children. Even when she tried to show kindness, she was met with cruelty. Once she saw a younger boy drop his basket of fruit in the marketplace. She rushed forward to help him pick it up, but instead of thanking her, his mother pulled him away, glaring at her. "Don't touch my son," the woman snapped. The onlookers sneered as though her attempt at kindness was an offense. She lowered her gaze, hiding the tears that threatened to fall, and walked away silently. Her life became a cycle of giving and being rejected, of enduring insults and hiding her pain. She lived in a world where even her good intentions were turned into reasons for scorn, and yet she never allowed herself to break. Each night when the house grew quiet, she lay in her bed and cried into her pillow, muffling the sobs so no one would hear. Tears poured like rivers, but behind those tears something else began to grow, a determination, fierce and unshakable. Behind the pain they saw there was a strength they could not see. Behind the tears was a fire they had no idea existed. She promised herself that one day she would rise above their cruelty, not for revenge, but to prove that their judgments had no power over her destiny. The world might mock her face, her clothes, her silence, but they could not touch the resilience within her. The isolation that should have broken her instead shaped her. The whispers of rejection became the fuel of her determination. For every cruel laugh she endured, she built a layer of strength. For every rejection, she stored a reason to fight harder. Her story, though drenched in pain, was not ending here. What no one knew was that the girl they laughed at was not meant to remain in the shadows forever. The cruelty she endured was quietly forging her into someone extraordinary. And though she walked alone, she was not defeated, because deep within her, she carried a truth that no insult could erase. One day, when the truth was revealed, their laughter would turn into silence, and the girl they called ugly would stand where no one ever imagined she could. While the villagers mocked her, she walked quietly through life, carrying a secret no one suspected. What they saw, the plain clothes, the bowed head, the silence, was only one side of her story. What they never knew was that when the laughter died down and the doors of her little home closed, she was not weeping in defeat. She was working. Every night when others rested, she lit a small lamp and opened worn-out books, teaching herself letters, numbers, and ideas that stretched far beyond the boundaries of her village. Some days she secretly traveled to the edge of town to meet an old teacher, a retired scholar who saw the hunger in her eyes. While others dismissed her as worthless, he whispered, "You are different. Use their rejection as your strength." His words fueled her like fire. Other times she practiced skills with her hands, sewing, crafting, keeping accounts, even negotiating at the small market stalls. Little things that seemed ordinary but slowly sharpened her mind and confidence. She learned to observe, to listen, to understand people in ways they never noticed. The same villagers who insulted her were unknowingly teaching her by exposing their own arrogance, wandering aimlessly when she disappeared for hours. In truth, she was connected to something far greater. There were whispers of a powerful family in her mother's bloodline that lived far away, respected and wealthy. Few knew the truth, and she never revealed it. Why? Because she wanted to see who would value her for her heart, not her name. To the villagers, she remained the poor, unwanted girl. To herself, she was a seed waiting for the right season to bloom. Every time they mocked her at the well, she smiled faintly, hiding the truth. Every time they jeered at her clothes, she lowered her gaze, knowing those rags were only temporary. She was not hiding out of shame. She was hiding out of wisdom. She wanted their real characters to show. She wanted to know who was truly kind and who would turn their back. They thought she was nothing. But in the silence of her nights and the secrecy of her days, she was preparing for something none of them could imagine. Her life became a secret journey, an invisible transformation. To the villagers, she was invisible, worthless, forgettable. But behind the curtain, she was sharpening her mind, nurturing her spirit, and shaping her destiny. And though they laughed louder with each passing day, she knew something they did not. The day was coming when the mask would fall away, and when it did, the laughter would vanish. Because the girl they mocked as powerless was quietly becoming the one who would one day hold all the power. The day of change began like any other. The villagers gathered for what was supposed to be an important event, a festival that brought everyone together, a meeting to discuss a pressing crisis, or perhaps the arrival of an official guest. The air buzzed with noise, chatter, and gossip. Children ran barefoot through the dust. Elders argued over small matters, and women whispered in groups, their eyes scanning every new face. No one expected anything extraordinary. No one expected her. As the sun began to dip, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, a hush swept over the crowd. At the edge of the road, a sleek vehicle rolled in, or perhaps it was a dignified carriage drawn by fine horses. Heads turned, whispers rose. Who could it be? A government official? A wealthy guest? The door opened, and there she was. A woman stepped out, tall, elegant, and commanding. Her clothes spoke of refinement. Her eyes radiated confidence, and her steps carried the weight of dignity. The years had transformed her into someone unrecognizable. She no longer bore the image of the ragged girl they had mocked. Instead, she shone with a quiet authority that silenced the square. The villagers froze. Some squinted, unsure if their eyes deceived them. Others nudged one another, murmuring, "Who is she? Where did she come from?" Even those who thought themselves too important felt a strange unease as her presence seemed to outshine them. She walked through the crowd, each step echoing louder than the drums of the festival. Though she smiled faintly, her gaze was steady, piercing as if she saw through every heart. They didn't know it yet, but the woman they were staring at was no stranger. She was the girl they had once laughed at, the one they had thrown away like dust, and now she was here to stand before them not as a victim, but as a force. She looks familiar? No, it cannot be. She's too different. Her transformation was almost unbelievable. Her posture was graceful. Her words, when she finally spoke, were clear and commanding. She addressed the gathering with respect, but also with a strength none of them could ignore. She was not pleading for their approval anymore. She was not lowering her head in silence. She was standing tall as if she had always belonged on that stage. Some tried to dismiss it at first. "She must be someone important from the city," muttered a man who once mocked her clothes. Others, however, felt an uneasy stirring in their hearts. Her face, her eyes, there was something hauntingly familiar about them. The festival drums faded. The chatter died. The children stopped playing. All attention fixed on her. And in that moment, though her name was not yet spoken, the villagers felt something shift. The balance of power they had always known, where they stood above her, mocking and rejecting, and had shattered. Now they were the ones whispering nervously, unsure, even afraid. They didn't know yet who she really was. But soon the truth would pour out, and with it, the weight of their shame. The girl they had rejected was no longer just a girl. She had become the woman who would turn their world upside down. The square was still, every eye locked on the mysterious woman. The whispers had grown louder. Who was she? Where had she come from? But no one dared to ask her directly. The villagers who once mocked and jeered were now fidgeting, their confidence dissolving into unease. At last she raised her hand, commanding silence. "My people," she began, her voice steady, carrying both warmth and authority. "You do not recognize me, yet I know each of you very well." Her words sent ripples through the crowd. Mothers glanced nervously at their children. Elders shifted uncomfortably on their stools. There was something about her tone, neither angry nor boastful but full of weight, that made even the most arrogant fall quiet. She paused, scanning their faces. Then came the words that shattered their disbelief. "I am the farmer's daughter, the very one you once mocked for her patched clothes, for her rough hands, for daring to dream beyond the fields." Gasps filled the air. A few people stepped back in shock, clutching their mouths. Others shook their heads violently, refusing to believe it. "It cannot be her," someone blurted. "The farmer's daughter was poor, worthless, nothing." But her eyes, sharp and unyielding, silenced him. "Yes, that was what you called me," she said firmly. "Poor, worthless, nothing. Yet while you mocked me, I was working. While you rejected me, I was learning. While you turned me away, I was preparing." She then revealed the truth that none had expected. Depending on the version, her secret unfolded. She might declare, "I am the rightful heir of a respected family. My bloodline, my heritage was hidden from you, but it flows through me still. The land you walk upon was once my family's gift to you." Or perhaps she would say, "I left with nothing, but I returned with everything. I built a business, I gained knowledge, and I earned respect far beyond this village. Today I am recognized as a leader, not only here but in the world outside." Or with calm finality she might add, "You may not have chosen me, but the government, the leaders of this land, have chosen me to guide you. I am now your appointed leader." Whichever truth spilled from her lips, it struck like thunder. The villagers' faces burned with shame. The same mouths that once spit insults were now silent. Those who had laughed the loudest could not even meet her gaze, and the elders, who had dismissed her as unworthy, bowed their heads in humiliation. One woman whispered, tears filling her eyes, "We threw her away, and she came back shining brighter than all of us." Children who had once pelted her with stones at the well now tugged at their mother's clothes, asking, "Is she truly the same girl?" Every insult, every rejection, every cruel word, they all returned now, heavy as stone upon the villagers' hearts. And yet she did not stand before them with anger. Her presence was not that of revenge, but of revelation. She wanted them to see the truth. The girl they cast aside had not broken. She had risen. "I did not return for vengeance," she said softly, her gaze sweeping across the crowd. "I returned to show you that no one is defined by poverty, nor by cruelty, nor by what others say. I returned to prove that even the most broken seed can grow into a mighty tree." Silence. Heavy, humbling silence. The villagers stood with heads bowed, each one forced to remember their part in her suffering. The ones who had laughed. The ones who had ignored. The ones who had whispered. None could escape the weight of their guilt. The secret was revealed. The girl they thought would remain in the dust of the fields had risen to the highest place of honor, and the village that mocked her would never forget the day they learned who she truly was. For a long moment no one spoke. The square, usually loud with gossip and laughter, was blanketed in silence. It was as though the entire village was holding its breath, unable to comprehend the truth they had just heard. Then, slowly, the murmurs began. "Could it really be her?" whispered one man, clutching his cap in trembling hands. "She was nothing. We made her feel like nothing," another woman muttered, her eyes welling with tears. A group of children, now older teenagers, stared at her wide-eyed, remembering how they once threw stones at her by the well. One of them dropped his head, ashamed, whispering, "We mocked her, and now look at her." Some villagers tried to approach, stammering half-formed apologies, but their voices cracked, their throats tightening under the weight of guilt. Others could not even lift their eyes. Husbands, wives, elders, and all bowed their heads, their pride crushed under the truth. At last she lifted her hand, commanding silence once again. "You mocked me when I was weak," she began, her voice neither angry nor bitter but calm and piercing. "You laughed at my patched clothes, my rough hands, my father's humble field. You judged me by what I did not have, and forgot to see what I carried inside." The crowd shifted uneasily. Some wept openly, while others clenched their fists, unable to bear her gaze. "I remember every stone, every insult, every door that was slammed in my face," she continued. "And I remember how it felt to walk away from this place with nothing but pain carried more than accusation. There was a lesson within them. But today," she said, her tone softening, "I do not stand here to return cruelty for cruelty. I stand here to remind you of what true worth means. A person's value is not measured by gold, by fine clothes, or by titles. True worth comes from the strength of the heart, from kindness, from determination, from the will to rise even when the world pushes you down." A gasp rippled through the villagers. Some nodded, tears streaming, realizing the truth of her words. "You cast me aside," she said firmly, "but your rejection became my fire. Your insults became my fuel. And now I return not as the girl you mocked, but as the woman you cannot ignore." She looked over the crowd, her eyes steady but filled with an unexpected grace. "I ask you, and not for me, but for yourselves, to never again judge someone by their poverty, their clothes, or their past. Learn to see beyond the surface. Learn respect. Learn humility, silence. No one dared to move. The weight of her words pressed on every heart. Shame was carved into every bowed head. And yet, in that silence there was also hope, a seed planted. The lesson she had carried back to them would not be forgotten. The villagers came face to face with their cruelty, and with the grace of the one they had rejected. In that square, humiliation turned to humility, and the girl they once scorned stood tall, not only as their equal, but as their teacher. The crowd remained frozen, heads bowed as her final words hung in the air. Some wept quietly. Others clutched their hands together as though praying for forgiveness. The same mouths that once mocked her were now silent, humbled by the truth. She let the silence linger, then stepped forward with grace. Her eyes softened, not with anger, but with something greater, compassion. "I carried your insults for years," she said gently, "but today I lay them down. I will not let bitterness chain me to the past. You mocked my face, my clothes, my poverty, but you could not break my spirit." The villagers lifted their eyes slowly, tears streaming down hardened faces. "Understand this," she continued, her voice calm but steady. "Beauty fades, wealth can vanish, and power will not last forever. But dignity, kindness, and truth, these never die." Her words fell like rain over the ashamed crowd, washing their hearts. Even those who once laughed the loudest now felt the sting of regret. Yet she did not gloat, nor did she demand retribution. "I forgive you," she said at last, "not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace." Gasps broke the silence, and some fell to their knees, overwhelmed by her mercy. The same villagers who once whispered behind her back now whispered prayers of gratitude for her grace. She stood tall, her presence no longer that of a ridiculed outcast, but of a woman who had transformed pain into power. The narrator's voice carried the lesson home. They thought her plain face made her unworthy. They thought her silence meant weakness, but they learned too late. True beauty is not in appearance but in character. And the girl they mocked became the woman who taught them humility. If people mocked you for your looks, for your poverty, for what they thought you lacked, would you forgive them once they discovered who you truly were? The music swelled, leaving the audience with a choice: cling to resentment or rise above it as she did. Outro reflection. Remember, beauty fades, but dignity and truth never do. The story closed not with revenge, but with grace, the kind that leaves hearts trembling and minds reflecting long after the tale is told.